Looks like we got some new people in today. That's good. How's it going, Tom? Do you have a microphone on you? You're muted by default, so you'd have to unmute. Any luck? I think I can ask you to unmute. Maybe here. I'll click on a button. See if it asks you to unmute. There you go.
Working now?
Yep. Now we can hear you.
Okay.
How's it going up there in Canada?
What's that?
I said, how's it going up in Canada?
Good. Weather's good.
Good to hear. All right, we got a Larry. What I see. Okay. Just a minute here. Okay. All right. Well, I don't think we need to really wait for anybody because it is going to be recorded. So I'm just going to jump on in. Move this stuff down here. Give me just a minute. Tom, did you happen to see last week of the video from Friday?
I missed last week's.
Do you know how to find the videos?
No.
Okay, so they are on my YouTube page.
Okay.
Let me see if I can start sharing my screen here. Give me just a second. Share this one. Okay. Let me make this smaller. There we go. Okay, so if we go to YouTube, and if you just search Memorial Designer without any spaces, this is my channel here, the one with this pyramid logo. So if you click on that, click on it. Come on. When it pops up, there's a menu here. There's one called playlists. So if you click on playlists, we've now created a playlist for Memorial Designer for Beginners webinars. So when you click on that, then it will go to the recordings from these. Okay.
Okay.
So that way you can watch last week's on Friday if you want to go back to it. So, Julia, how'd it go from last week?
Oh, it was good. I wrote down a couple questions and I sent you an email about and that popped up, and I didn't know. I mean, it doesn't have to be covered today, but just sometime in there, it's a beginner question. But it was good, and I've been practicing, and I sent out 3 sketches now, and a lady said she had already gone to 2 other monument shops, but she was coming to me because her mom could see what the stone looked like.
Well, there you go.
I know.
Pretty awesome, huh?
Yeah, I was super happy. Yeah, so I was just wondering, how do I get the middle of the rings polished? Okay,
so first thing is we're going to go back to grayscale.
Okay.
Last time we did a meeting, these videos got in the way, but I kind of liked them still. So I'm hoping spotlight for everyone. No.
Well, and if you need to do this a different time, that's fine too.
No, I'd like to do it right now, actually.
Okay.
I don't know what spotlight for everyone is. Oh, maybe that's what it does. Okay, so over here in the granite fill, or in the fills docker, the 4th icon over is what's called 2 grayscale. Okay. Oh. When you click on 2 grayscale, what it does is it just takes out the granite fills that have been applied. You don't lose them. It remembers that they were there. It's just going to go back to the grayscale for you.
Okay.
Before we get to your question, I'm going to just show you a couple of things here. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know how to get rid of that either.
Yep. So right here, it says click here with text tool to add paragraph text. So what's happened is you have accidentally created paragraph text somewhere. And if you look at your Fossland thing, you see how there's all these dotted lines?
Yeah.
that usually denotes that you have turned that into paragraph text. You can also see this handle here, this odd handle, that's a paragraph text handle, and this one down here is a paragraph text handle as well. So that's gonna tell us that that's paragraph text, especially since you've got this click here to, whatever paragraph text thing.
Right.
So you accidentally turn that into paragraph text. So what we would do is we'd come up to text. Actually, hold on. I'm trying to remember. I think you just right click on it and you say break paragraph text inside a path apart. So, or just hit Control K. So if we hit Control K, what that does is it'll pull that paragraph text out of that, and then we'll just hit delete to get rid of it.
Okay. I did it on another one too accidentally. Okay.
Yeah, so the way that happens is if you have the text tool and you come over anywhere and you click anywhere inside this text, if you notice my text cursor right now is an A icon.
Yeah.
If I just click right now, it's going to make artistic text. If I move over slightly just to the edge of the design, then what it's going to do is if I click right there, it's going to turn that whole object into a paragraph text box, which is what it did for your text.
Wow.
Okay? So that's how it happens, is that you accidentally click the text tool inside that object. And it could be, if I undo this, it could be that this is no longer text anymore. So maybe you were trying to edit it as text, and now you can't because it's not text anymore.
Okay.
That would be my guess.
Okay.
It also looks like maybe you made it bolder than what it originally was.
I can't even remember.
So anyway, that's what happened there.
Okay.
And now to answer your question about pulling out the centers of these rings.
Yep.
I'll get rid of that J too.
Yep.
There's a tool up here called Knockout, this KO button.
Okay.
So with Knockout, what you can do is you can click inside the areas that you want to knock out. And then you have to make sure that when you're done doing that, you hit escape on the keyboard. If you don't hit escape and it goes back to your pick tool, then you're going to be stuck inside that knockout tool, and it'll just mess up everything because you're knocking stuff out that you're not even knowing.
So I do knock out, select it, and then I hit, what did you say?
Yeah, so I'll start back over.
Okay.
You're going to select knockout.
Yep.
Move your cursor over. It changes the cursor to a crosshair, so you can actually see a difference in your cursor. And then you just click anywhere inside the filled portion that you want to get rid of. So it doesn't matter where, just anywhere in here. And you just click.
Okay.
And as soon as you're done, you hit escape on the keyboard, and escape will then get you back to your pick tool and out of the knockout tool.
And then I can choose polish or frosted.
So it's already going to show through to what's underneath it. So it's already going to show through to the polish on the stone.
Awesome. Okay,
Now,
thank you.
That works on these rings because they're where they're supposed to be. If they were over the top of this panel, then you're going to show through to the panel underneath it.
Okay.
Right? So that may not be what you want in certain cases, but when it's just like this over the top of your stone, then that's what you want.
So the areas of the cross with the rosary, right now as polish on the drawing or the sketch, can I use knockout in there too? Or how would I make that frosted? The cross.
So I'm just looking at this. There's actually multiple pieces that are exactly the same. I'm not sure why. So I'm going to delete one of those. Okay. And you can see now that we've got this and that. And so these inside pieces are currently combined with the black outline, and that's what causes it to show through to the polish underneath it.
Okay.
If you grab everything and just hit this button up here, which is called Fill Grayscale.
Yep.
What that will do is it will make sure that those inside pieces get combined with everything else that's on the inside, and it gets turn to 10% gray, and then you only have the outline. That's
Okay.
black. So is
Okay.
any of this supposed to be polished?
No, well, as of right now, just frosted.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out how to do it to get it to them.
Yep. So fill grayscale is going to do that for you. But like I said, for some reason over here, there were duplicates of your outlined piece.
Okay.
It doesn't look like there are on this one, so no problem there. We'll just grab it and hit fill grayscale, and then it will fill those in the way that you want.
Okay. Awesome.
So what Knockout does, just so that you know how it works, if I move all these pieces over, you can see that they're all combined together. They're one single object, and they've all got the same 10% gray fill. When you combine pieces together, they can only have one set of properties. And so by combining them all together, they all become 10% gray. But what happens is every time that there's a new shape inside of a shape, so we've got this outline, and then we've got the inside one. When it comes to this inside one, it's going to basically cut away from the one behind it. And so it's cutting away, showing what's underneath it. Just like if you took a cookie cutter and cut into some, cookies, you're cutting this portion out. So that's like peeling out that portion of the cookie. And so that's what's happening here, is that you're combining those objects to show through to what's underneath it. So when we use the Knockout tool, what it does is when we click with Knockout, it's taking that one path, they're called subpaths. So it's taking this one subpath and removing it from this portion, the frosted portion, and instead of combining it with the frosted portion, it's combining it with the outline. And by so doing, it's now making the outline show through to what's underneath it.
Okay.
So that's what Knockout is doing, is it's removing the path from here and combining it with the black underneath it, showing through to what's underneath that instead. Because otherwise it would just be frosted all together. Does that make sense?
I think so.
You think so? I know it's kind of hard to wrap your head around how combining works, but that is, that's how that's working there.
Cameron, on Fosland,
Yep.
how do you get rid of those little specks in there that you don't want to cut?
These
Like
ones in
that,
here?
yeah, the little
Do you want
specks.
like any
that
of them,
one?
or just to get rid of
Well,
all
like
of them?
leave the long line, but the little triangle pieces,
Okay.
how do you get rid of those?
So because this is all combined together, okay?
Yep.
All of these little pieces end up combined to the rest of the text, and all of these pieces are combined together. So they're all going to move together. They're all going to be colored the same. They're all combined objects. If we break them apart, so if we come up here to this break apart, we're breaking them apart now into individual objects, which you can see down here are 31 different objects. So that one object that we had now became 31 because it's broken up into the individual pieces. Okay, so that's one way, is that you can break up your pieces, and then if you hit V to go to wireframe, you can see them because they're currently the same color as everything else. So if you just click on them, you can delete them with your pick tool. That's one option. The downside to doing it this way is that because we broke it all apart, you'd have to then go put it all back together, right? As soon as it's done, you'd need to go make sure that all your pieces are put back together, which isn't horrible, but it's a few steps. So we'd have to come back now to this. We'd have to refill with grayscale. Then we'd have to go back to Knockout, and we'd have to knock these pieces back out. So there's extra steps that we would need to take in order to get that to work nicely by pulling those out. So, but that's one way, is to break it all apart into individual pieces. Now that I showed you how the breaking apart works, what I'll do is I'm going to go back to how it was before, okay? And this time I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to go to wireframe first, and I'm going to break it apart. But this time I'm not going to clear my selection. So my selection is still on all of these pieces, but they're broken apart now. So if I just hold Shift, what Shift does is it actually removes pieces from your selection. So I can come in here and holding Shift, deselect these ones, and that's going to then pull those out of my selection for me. So now they're not in my selection. And so I can easily recombine all of those inside pieces. And that's all recombined now. But now I've got all those little teeny tiny pieces that all I have to do is swipe across like this. It'll grab all of those, and then I can just hit delete. So that's a little bit faster, but it's as far as keyboard and clicking and stuff, you kind of have to think of it a little bit differently because we're pulling things out of our selection. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank
I know
you.
it's a little bit to wrap your head around.
I'll just have to rewatch it like 17 times,
yep,
but that's okay. We don't need
So you
to.
just go back to the video and rewatch it. So that's how you would do it if you are breaking things apart, okay? Is either break it all apart, grab the pieces, delete them, recombine, or break it apart and holding Shift, you would deselect those from your selection. Now you might find this way a little bit nicer, and that is to use what's called the virtual segment delete tool. It's nested under the crop tool, so the third one down, virtual segment delete. And what virtual segment delete does, when you click on a path, it's going to delete that path until it intersects with something. And since these are all by themselves, they don't intersect with anything. So they're just going to delete themselves. So anytime you click on one of these paths, it's going to delete it and get rid of it. You don't have to mess with combine. You don't have to mess with anything else. You're just clicking on them and it's deleting those paths. So this one's a little easier, I think, because you're not doing any of those other things, but obviously it takes, about the same amount of clicks. And then we can switch back to our pick tool. So that's virtual segment delete. Easy enough?
Will be.
Hope so. I'm sure there are other ways, but is that enough ways, or do you want to see one more?
Well, that's plenty.
Yeah, plenty.
I know this is for beginners, so I will keep it simple. All right. The only other thing that I noticed from this is if we pull down a guideline. So guidelines you can grab anywhere on your ruler. If you just click and pull out, it's gonna pull out a guideline. I don't know why it's not.
I couldn't get mine to work, and I'm not sure why.
You couldn't get guidelines to work?
No, I couldn't get them to come down. The whole screen kept coming down to my. So I didn't know if I uninstalled them or took them off or something.
If the whole, well, I don't know.
Okay.
You just need to click somewhere inside the
Okay.
the ruler itself and start pulling down.
Okay.
But for some reason, they're not actually showing up, which is odd. I don't know if that's a bug in 2021 or if that's something funky going on, but there you are.
I've gotten mine to work, but I can't get them off.
I'm going to start a new document and pull some down and see if it works in a new document. Yeah, they're there. So that's working.
Yeah, I did it at Jeremiah's, but I couldn't get it to do it here. And I thought maybe I hit a button or something.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Okay.
Guidelines. Oh, so there's this button here, show guidelines. That's probably what's happening. It's not
Okay.
pressed. So hey, look at that. There's all our guidelines.
Oh, awesome.
Yep.
Okay,
So
I'll look.
you would uncheck the show guidelines button.
Okay. All right.
Right next to it, this is one of my buttons, is delete all. So if you end up having a bunch and you don't want them anymore, if you just click that, it gets rid of all of them at the same time. And it actually deletes them, whereas the button next to it, this one is just hiding them.
Okay.
Okay.
By the ruler button. Okay.
And then I don't know if you're done with those or not, and I apologize if I'm interrupting. I just noticed like her names and dates in the box are not spaced apart.
I didn't center them because I can't remember how to, oh, you mean kerning?
Not just center them, but how they're kerned. So
Yeah.
that
I
would be a
didn't.
real basic.
Yep. That was actually one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was editing your text. Last time we talked about using the text tool to type up your text.
Yeah.
But today I'd like to talk about how to use the shape tool to add spacing
Oh.
to your text. So we will cover that. But I did want to show too that, if we look at these panels, they're not lined up with each other.
No.
Okay. If we pull down a guideline here to the text, if we zoom, I can line this up right here with the bottom of the M. And then if I come over to this one, to the bottom of this M, we'll see that there's space there. So they're not lined up as well. So there are a couple different things you can do. You can move these pieces that you have if you want to move them to get them all in order, okay? I'll just move it down this way. Or you can grab your existing panel here and just hit mirror objects. And what mirror objects will do is it will put them over, it'll put a copy of it, but a mirrored copy over on the other side. Now, the reason that it's all messed up is because this outline that we have did not get mirrored. It got mirrored, but it didn't get unmirrored, because what the code does is it knows that this is text, and so it says, oh, well, that should be text. And so it will re-mirror that text. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull that out and delete that. And then we'll just retype this text. Okay, so we got James Octor, 1932 to 2020. And that way we've got the same. And I'm just holding Shift to select all those, and then I'm hitting C to center to my panel. So now they're all centered to the panel. Okay. So what Tammy was saying was here you've got outlines running into each other, and that's because your lettering is so close together that the outlines end up hitting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are a couple different ways to change how much spacing is between your letters. And one of those is if you go to the text docker over here on the right, and if you don't see the text docker, there's a little plus sign down at the bottom where you can click plus, and then there will be a list of available dockers. So you would just click on the text docker inside that, which is right here. So the text docker, what we would do is first make this go a little bit, whatever the word is, we're going to pull it down, right? So we're on the paragraph tab. We're not on the character tab. We're not on the frame tab. We're in the paragraph tab here. And there is something called character spacing. So what character spacing is it's the space between your characters. So if I change it to 15% spacing and hit enter, it's going to give me 15% more spacing between each of those letters. If I want to make sure that this is done the same way, I would just use the same number. So I would hit 15 and it would then space it out the same amount. Okay, so you can do that with numbers using the character spacing. Or if you grab the shape tool, which is this one over here, shape tool gives you a little handle right here that lets you interactively pull and add character spacing. Okay.
Wow.
So that depends on whether you want it to, be exact, or whether you want it to, just look good. I am a visual guy, so I will just make it look good to whatever looks good to my eye. I don't really worry about a number. The number over here now has changed. So character spacing has changed, but you'll also notice that this number changed, which is word spacing. So word spacing is the amount of space between these two words. So just by pulling on this, it's not only adding character spacing, it's also adding word spacing at the same time, so that it's proportionally going to grow. Okay.
Okay.
one of the tricks with the shape tool is if you hold shift while you do that, it's only going to adjust word spacing. So when I let go of this, it's going to adjust this amount, but it didn't touch this one. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Can you
And
do that when you have the outline on the letters, or do you have to do it before you put the outline on
It
the
depends
letters?
on how you'd create the outline. So if you take this text and you run my frosted outline button,
Mhm.
what frosted outline does is it creates your outline for you and then automatically breaks it apart. So it's separated now from the text. So using my frosted outline button will not stay interactive. If instead you manually create the outline using contour, and we're just going to contour it to the outside, then the contour actually becomes stuck to that object. So it's nicer if you manually contour because you can pull this and the outline's going to go with it. Okay. And it's also editable. So if I changed his name to, I don't know, something else, then it's also going to refresh and build the outline around it automatically, right? So contour will let you maintain that connectivity. Frosted outline is meant to be super fast and just build it for you. And so it automatically breaks it apart. Because what you have to remember when it comes time to cutting is some cutters and some times when you export, depending on what you're cutting to, they don't see contours, and so you end up having to break those contours apart, which isn't bad. You just go up to object and well, we'd have to select the contour itself, and then you go up to object and say break contour apart. So you have to remember to do that manually if you're manually using the contour tool. So that's one reason the frosted outline does what it does, is because that way it automatically breaks it apart for you. And then it also automatically colors the inside of your letters as well. If we were to take this 1932-2020 and contour it, it's just going to look bolder because the inside letter is still black. So you have to manually come in and change the color of your piece. If you just click on the text, we can click 10% black and it's going to change it to 10%. But then you can edit, other colors as well. Does that answer your question, Tammy?
It does, yes, thank you.
Okay. So that's what I would do if I were to do outline text like this, which I normally would not do outline text just because I really don't like it myself. I find it harder to sandblast. I don't like the look of it, and that's just my personal opinion. But I definitely wouldn't want the outlines to run together like this. So I would delete the current outlines, grab the text, space it out a little bit more, and then I would re-outline it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
And you can also see on James's side, his outline is smaller than Mary's side. The reason
Yeah.
for that is because the frosted outline tool, okay, if you hold control and click on it, it will tell you what the outline is. And I was messing with this earlier, so I was matching somebody else's outline. So it was thicker to begin with. I usually do a 0.09. If on text, I'm actually going to go probably a 0.075, 0.08, somewhere in there, because it's so small. And so that's why those were different, is because the setting for frosted outline was different.
Okay.
And on this one, if we went back to the contour tool, my setting here was 0.08. So now those should match because they're both 0.08. But that's why they didn't match before, is because I had that setting different.
I was trying to move a line of text, just very small increments down,
Okay.
but I couldn't control like how far down it went every time I hit like the arrow key.
Okay, so that's called a nudge. And nudging is set if you have nothing selected, your nudge is here on the property bar. But because
Oh.
sometimes when you have things selected, you know, the property bar changes. I actually
Oh.
added another nudge up here on the regular toolbar. I think this one's called the standard toolbar. So I put it here so that you can always get to it. So if you change it to like 0.01, then when you grab your text and hit down, it's only going to go by 0.01 instead of 0.25.
Oh, nice.
Can
Okay.
I change that default on my nudge?
Yeah, so the
do
way
it-
that defaults work, defaults are document based. So if I change 0.01 right now, this is now going to be the default in this document until I change it again. Okay, but if I go to a new document, then,
It goes back.
well, it's supposed to. That's funny. Maybe it doesn't. Huh, it used to. Okay, so maybe nudging is not document based. I might have misspoken. All right, well, there you go. There you have it. You can change it to whatever you want. And
That's nice to know.
yeah,
It's
I thought it was document based, but maybe not. Okay, so, but that's nudge. And so there's 3 ways that nudge works, because you can also do a super nudge or a micro nudge using control or shift. And so that's why I usually have it at 0.25, because just by having it at 0.25, if I hit down right now, it's going to go down by 1/4 inch. If instead I hold control, which is a micro nudge or half of a nudge, it's going to go 1/8 inch. If I hold shift, it's going to go twice that amount, which is 1/2 inch. So depending on whether I'm holding control, shift, or nothing, I can go 1/8, 1/4, or 1/2 inch with nudging. That's why I default to 0.25. CorelDRAW itself defaults to like 0.01 so that you have really teeny tiny nudges. And if you like the tiny nudge, but you want to be able to super nudge or micro nudge more than 0.02 instead of 0.01, then you can actually go to the tools options, and I think it's under CorelDRAW. Let's see, it's under here somewhere. Where is nudging?
Call from 16478 50769.
Gosh, I can't remember where it's at. That's not it. Yeah. Pick tool. Where is my nudge? I'll find it somewhere.
That's okay.
It's in here somewhere anyway. Snapping maybe. No.
We can figure, I think we're good with what we,
All right, we'll find it later. But it's in here somewhere, where basically you can set the super nudge and the micro nudge to be a different multiple instead of 2. You can make it like 10 or whatever you want to do. But yeah, I'll have to look. I don't know where they put it. It's in here somewhere. But that's how you would do smaller amounts, is by changing that nudge amount. Okay.
yep, thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so the last thing, Julia, that you wanted to know is how to fit June 29th, 1957 inside these rings, right?
Yep.
I do have a YouTube video on this.
And I can watch that too. If you have something else to address, I can watch the video. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Yep, so that's what I'm going to point you to, is
Yep.
a YouTube video that is called, I think it's called Fitting to Path or Fitting to Complicated Paths is what.
Okay.
So search for that one on the channel. And if you haven't used the search before under the YouTube channel, so there is this little icon here for searching. So if you just do fit to complicated and hit enter, and it should find it, fit text to complicated paths.
I'll watch it.
Okay. All right. Okay. And let's see. Larry, I also forgot to say, I know you said that you didn't have a microphone or camera. So if you did want to chat at all, if you had any questions, feel free to chat. I do have the chat on here somewhere. So I'll look and make sure that if you do ask any questions, that we can answer those as well. But there you have it. That kind of shows what I do there. Last thing, this is not centered. And we've got different pieces here. So we've got text, and then we've got this rectangle for being able to add the future date, right?
Mhm.
Now, Julia, on this, would you actually keep these polished, or would they be frosted?
We're kind of doing a similar stone to a family one, so they want them they want the edges polished.
They want the edge, like the black part polished?
Yep, they want that polished.
Okay, so we'd come back in here and switch that to polish, and we'd switch this to polish.
Oh.
Like that.
Oh, I didn't know I could do that. Okay.
So this one, because it's a contour and the contour is still stuck to the original, if I were to change the color, it's going to change the text color, not the outline color. And so your contour color is actually set up here. So I would grab my color here, and then CMYK are the colors. It basically, if you go to 30% black, the K value is your black value. So if you do 0 for everything else but 30% for black, then that's going to be the equivalent
to cool.
Polish. So we'll do the same thing for this one.
So
have it, and 30. I don't know why it's not automatically doing it, but let's change that back to 0. There we go.
Toolbar.
So you can do that, or if you've already got an existing color, right, then there is the eyedropper. Anywhere you see this color eyedropper, you can actually sample from the screen. So you can just sample it and it'll turn it to that color too.
Okay, cool.
So there we go on that one. But what I was saying is we've got multiple things here. We've got this and this. So if I wanted to center, if I just click on this and here and hit center, it's going to move, this stuff, the text to the center, but not anything else. And so this is where grouping comes into play. If you grab these things and group them first, if you turn them into a group, and the same thing for this, if we wanted to grab it and group it because they're actually two separate objects, those become groups. And by becoming groups, when we select those and then select the panel, we can hit C and it'll center the group as opposed to the individual pieces that are inside that group.
Nice.
And so that's one use for grouping. We didn't have to do that over here because 1, you don't have the extra rectangle, and 2, the outlines are actually applied, or they're still stuck to your original text, so you don't have to do it there. Okay?
Yep. And if you were to leave a polished box for a future date, what I did, because I didn't know, I went over to the left-hand side toolbar, just grabbed that square and went over and just created one so she could see it.
Yep, that's what I would do.
Okay.
I would normally, if it were me, I would normally come in and type in some sort of future date, that's going to be kind of large. And because by doing that, then you can make sure that it's going to, pretty much be in the location that you need it to be.
Well, that makes sense.
So I would type in a date like this.
Yep.
And even if you just do, I don't know, 30/30 or whatever, it doesn't matter. But by doing a bunch of zeros too, the zeros are usually wider than everything else. So that's going to give you more room than what you need. You know what I mean? So it's totally up to you. But I normally just do something that's, similar to what maybe will happen. And then I will build my rectangle around that. So that I've got enough room, just to give me enough room. And because it should then be on the right side where it ought to be. However, we've still got that text underneath here, right?
Right, that's what I was just gonna say. How do we get rid of that?
So all you do is instead of horizontal alignment, you just change your alignment to left, and then you can swipe and delete the text, and it's not going to move the text. If you had it on center, if we kept it on center and we swipe the text, it's going to move the 1935 to the middle because it's center.
Oh, sure,
Center,
sure.
right? So instead, by changing our alignment to left, then we can just swipe and delete, and it's not going to move anything. And then we've got our box in the right place, we got our text in the right place, and you know, everything's good to go.
Cool.
Make sense?
Yep. Can you send that back to me?
Yeah, now that it's done, I'm not going to waste your time. Yeah, we'll certainly save it. We're going to go to my desktop. And
Anyway,
you're using what version are you using? 2021 or 2020?
I don't know. We just got it before we left.
I don't remember. So I'll talk about this though, because when you save a drawing, by default, it's going to save the drawing as the current version of CorelDRAW that you're running.
Okay.
If you want to share with anybody that's using an older version, if you do a save as, then there's a version number here, and you can change to a lower version number so that they can then open it up, you know, on their machine. So I usually just default to, if I'm sending this to somebody else, I'm just going to go to 2017 because that's the last one that I support.
Okay.
So I'll change it to 2017, save it, and then when I send it to you, it's gonna open up. So now it's asking this question: this document contains granite fills. Would you like to convert them to grayscale to save disk space? The reason that it's asking that is because we actually have granite fills applied to this. Okay, I'm going to say no. Just to show you what happens if you say no. When you say no, it keeps those granite fills inside. Well, if they weren't applied yet, so it's not going to do anything because we were in the grayscale. It's not going to mess with anything. But if we were in this view where it was already polished and I said no, it would keep all of those granite fills applied, and it makes your file sizes larger. So I'm going to refill. This is like, if I click on it and say, what fill is this? What color? It tells me it's Dakota Mahogany.
Oh, cool.
I myself actually use the HD version just because I like it a little bit better. The original Dakota Mahogany was one of our original colors that we created back in the 90s. And so to me, it's a little dated, but that's okay. If we refill now with this Dakota Mahogany, it'll fill everything in for us.
Oh.
You'll notice over here though that something happened, right?
Yep.
Our text now disappeared. We have not told granite fills to work inside contoured shapes. And so it doesn't know that this outline should be different color from the text itself. And so it actually applied the fill to the contour. So that's another reason for breaking your contours apart, is because then when you do that, by breaking these apart, you can color them separately. You can tell this to be black, or no, it wasn't black, it was polished. And you can tell this to be polished. And then when those fill in, they will fill in correctly. But that's why they disappeared, was because it was still connected to the text underneath it.
Okay.
So if you're running into stuff like that, that's why that's happening. But now that everything is filled in, I'll go ahead and save it again. I do need to do a save as, because otherwise it'll go back to version 2021. If I click on save, it'll tell me that. It'll say, hey, you want to put it in the most recent version. So we're not going to do that. We'll go back to save as, change my version again. and then I'll save it and say yes.
Okay. I have seen that.
And then again, if depending on the way you have your settings, it's going to ask you whether you want to convert them or not. I say yes to convert them to grayscales. That way it will save disk space.
Okay.
If I go back to the settings, the setting to remove granite fills on save is this one. So I'm going to actually uncheck that because I don't want it to ask me every time. I want it to just automatically do it. And now we will be done with that file there.
Oh.
And then if when I send it to you, you go and open that file up. So when you find that file, you can click open and it will either prompt you or it will automatically restore those fills for you because they had been filled before.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
All right, so I'll send that off to you. Okay. Now, Tom, if there's anything that you want to know about specifically, feel free to interrupt me at any time.
Okay.
The things that I wanted to talk about today, and we've already covered some of it, were the shape tool and how to use the shape tool. I also wanted to talk a little bit about opening and importing designs. And then that will probably take up the majority of our time. So do you have anything that you want to cover before those things, or are we good to go that way?
No, you're good to go. I'll play around with it, and maybe I'll have some questions for next time.
Okay, sounds good. So let's talk about opening first. Opening a file, you can do it from here. If you click on it, it pulls up the open dialog where you can then get to your files. If you click the down arrow next to it, that gives you a list of recently used files. So that's going to be your most recent files that you used. You can clear that if you want so that it doesn't show those. But anytime you open a file, it's going to keep a history of that. Or you can go to File, Open, and that's basically doing the exact same thing as that button, except that the history is not there, right? We don't have a history of the files there. And when you open files, opening is really meant for, I mean, you can see there are all sorts of different file formats that CorelDRAW can open, like a bunch of them, right? But opening is really meant for vector file formats. If I tried to open up just a JPEG, so if I come in here and find a JPEG file, I'm sure I've got one somewhere. Here's a PNG. If I click on that and try to open it, it's going to say the file cannot be opened. Try using import instead. So because this is a bitmap file, it is not something that can just be opened up. So instead, you would import. Importing will let you bring in other file types. And it will also let you bring in other, you can still do vector designs, but you can do them into your current document. If you click open, it's going to open up a document, and the documents are all listed here as tabs. So if I were to open up a document, I'll just go back to yours, Julia, because it's sitting there. If I open it back up, it's going to open up as a new tab along the bar here. If you import instead, what it does is it brings in whatever you're importing into the current document. So if I came back to this design and I went to import and I wanted to grab a file, again, it doesn't really matter what I'm grabbing, but let's grab this here. So if I import, what it does is it brings that into your current document as opposed to opening up a new document. Okay, and it will also give you more support for more file types as well, because it can do bitmaps as well. So that's one way of opening up files. Another that's pretty common is just dragging and dropping. So if you had File Explorer open and you had a design, a JPEG or whatever, you can just drag and drop and it will throw it onto your thing as well. If you're on the internet and you drag and drop an image off the internet, it's not going to drag and drop the image. Normally it's going to bring in a URL to that image. So it's not actually bringing in the image itself, it's bringing in the URL that that image goes with. So I wouldn't suggest trying to drag and drop pictures off the internet. You would want to save those to your hard drive first, and then you can drag and drop those in. If you are one that likes to drag and drop. Another thing that you can do is use one of the Dockers that lets you get to your files. There's one over here called Connect Content. This is new to 2020, I think 2019 is when they added it. So Connect Content is new, and it will let you go and find your designs. Basically, you set this up ahead of time with categories and other things so that your designs show up. And then once they're in there, you can drag and drop them from here onto your thing. Now, the reason it's taking so long, I clicked on designs, which I probably shouldn't have. There's like 12,000 files in this folder, and so what it's doing right now is it's indexing all of those files. So if I scroll down, you'll see, I mean, there's a whole bunch of designs in here, right? That's why it took so long, is because it was indexing all of those, and then they've also got subcategories in them. So if I went to Ivies and Vines, I can just drag and drop those onto my screen. Okay. And this lets you change your thumbnail sizes pretty easily. So if you want to go up or down on those, you can make them bigger or smaller so that you can see them better. So Connect Content Docker. There's also another Connect Docker that is just called, well, it used to be. Wonder if they got rid of it. That's crazy. In 2020, there's going to be a Connect Docker that you can click on. And go from there. Or that's about it as far as opening and importing these buttons, the Docker, or dragging and dropping. Any questions on opening files?
No, I love the Connect Content button.
I like it too, for the most part. I will say that there's always something that I don't like about anything. So we're thinking about actually making our own clip art Docker instead, so that we'll do exactly what we want it to. But for now, I would definitely use it for sure.
You were talking about importing, Cameron. What
Yep.
about if you want to export an AI file so you can bring it over into open it in MemorialCAD?
Yeah, so AI files, if you go up to File and say Export, okay, when you do that, it gives you a Save As type. So you can click Save As and change to AI. It's going to be at the top of the list because it's alphabetical. So you can choose AI. And then when you click Export, it's going to pop up options for what version of AI you want to do.
Yep.
And all of these other, whether you want to export your text as text or curves or those different things, it's going to give you any issues. So by going to File and saying Export, you can do that, and you can go through all those steps every time. Or if you're really just trying to go back to another program like MemorialCAD or Gerber or whatever, what I do is I first get rid of my fills, because sending an AI file with fills in it is going to make a massively huge file with a whole bunch of EPS files attached to it. So I wouldn't send anything that's got bitmaps or fills in it. So what I do first is I'll just make a plot page, because that will take out all those fills for me. And then I have a quick AI export button here. So just by clicking on that button, it will, and it's not going to tell you it's doing anything because it's just meant to be fast. But what that does is it will send the AI file to my export folder. And so if I go into Memorial Designer in my documents, and then there's an export folder in there, and it will automatically give me an AI file that is named the same thing as what my CorelDRAW file was. And it's already set for the settings that you need to import it nicely into MoneyCAD or Gerber or whatever, because it's using an older AI version, and it'll work nicely that way.
I think that's the way that's the way he does it.
Yeah, so that's what I do is I just click my AI button because it's meant to be super fast.
And then JPEG goes to proofs and
Yeah,
AI goes to.
Yep, JPEG goes to proofs. PDF, sometimes I tell it to go to export, sometimes I tell it to go to proofs. I don't actually do PDFs a lot, so I don't use that. But if you want to tell those where to go, if you hold Control and click on either the PDF or the AI button, it pulls up your import export folder location, so you can tell it where you want those to go. Right now I've got PDF going to export, the same place as the AI is going. But you just click on this icon to the right and map it differently. And so especially if you know, you want to share files with somebody else in your office and you're using Google Drive or Dropbox or something else, you can then, you know, point to a different folder for those to go to. I use OneDrive, so it's already syncing to where it needs to go. But that's how you would do that. And so that's a quick button right there, or you can do it manually if you want to.
I have a really stupid question.
There are no stupid questions.
Well, kind of is. Okay, you said you can export it as a text or a curve.
Yep.
I don't know what a curve means.
Okay, that's a really stupid question. So text is editable as text. It's a font on your machine. So I've got it listed up here as a font. It's editable as text. So I can come in here and swipe, and I can change that text because it's text. Okay. It acts like text, and I can edit it as text. And that's what text is. Curves is when you take that text and convert it. I'll just do it manually. I'm going to go up to Object, and I'm going to say Convert to Curves. That text is no longer text. It's turned the special font file text stuff into the individual curves that make up that actual text.
Okay. All right. I got it.
And what happens when you do that is now it's not editable. You can't click and swipe. You can't do any of that stuff. You can move your nodes, you know, you can move things around that way, or you can pull nodes and really mess with stuff.
Okay.
But you can't edit it anymore as text. And that's what happened up here to your Fosslin stuff, is that this is no longer text. It's actually been converted to curves.
So, but I can turn it back to text, correct?
You cannot.
Oh.
You would have to retype it in order to get text again.
Oh, good to know.
Yep. So it's a one-way thing, one-way street. You're not coming back. You're like past the point of no return.
Okay, good to know.
So the reason that it asks you when you're sending the files out is because a lot of times you're going into other programs that don't have those same font files or don't have the ability to open up a true type font. So if you want all of this to look exactly the way that it does inside CorelDRAW in another program, you often convert that text to curves so that when it comes in, it's going to look the exact same. It's just not going to be editable the same way, but it's not going to, you know, change your font or anything like that.
Cool.
So this AI button automatically has it set to convert to curves when it converts to your AI.
That's good to know. Now some things make sense. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the difference between text and curves.
Okay.
Opening, okay, we talked about that. All right, so the last thing I wanted to talk, and we're cutting it on time here, but it's okay. We're going to talk about the shape tool a little bit. We talked about pick tool last time, but the shape tool, and if we just highlight over it, it says edit a curve, object, or text character by manipulating nodes. That's what it's meant to do, is it's meant to let you move things around, pull things out, la-di-da, by manipulating nodes. We had talked before about how to get rid of these little pieces. You can do the same thing with the shape tool by just manipulating nodes, grabbing them and hitting delete. Or if you wanted to make this thicker, you can grab the node and pull it out. Same thing over here. You can grab that node and pull it out. So you get access to changing the shape of your object with the shape tool. And if it's curves like this, that's how it works. Just like this text, if it were text though, it acts different because you're not manipulating curves. Instead, what you're doing is it's giving you the ability to move each of those letters. And we showed you how you can do that this way by just pulling on that handle. Or if you didn't want to do all of these at the exact same time, you can click individual letters and move individual letters. So if I wanted these two letters to be a little closer to the T, I can grab those and just nudge them over and it'll nudge that way, right? So I can just nudge them over. But it's still editable as text, which is nice. So we're messing with kerning and we're messing with stuff, but it's not turning it to curves. It's still editable as text. So if I, had misspelled that or, thought it was supposed to be October or something, I don't know, but you can still edit that as text. As soon as you convert it to curves,
You're done.
It's no longer swipeable. You're now messing with the shape of the letter, which is nice too, because sometimes if you wanted, to be all fancy and make this fancy or something, you can do that, but it acts differently. Okay. And that's really the difference between your text and whatever, because now I've got full manipulation of what that looks like. Not that that's pretty, because it's really not, but does that make sense?
Yeah.
But now I can't tell that to go back to text and be editable anymore. It's not. It's just curves for now on. So you have to make sure if you're messing with things, converting it to text, that you really want it to stay that way. Okay, well, that pretty much gets us on time for today. Unless there are any more questions, I'm happy to answer questions. But as far as trying to keep these to hour-long videos, that's going to put us at an hour for today.
I'm good.
Okay. Everybody else good?
Yep.
Sarah, do you have a microphone? No? Yeah?
I do.
Do you have any questions?
I don't. I was just kind of popping in. We have a lot of office activity going in and out. We've got some new equipment coming in, so I didn't want to have you guys listen to too much commotion on my end.
Oh, no. Appreciate it. It is recorded, so as soon as I'm done, I'll post it to the YouTube page. So if you missed anything at the beginning, you can go back and rewatch it as well. So. Okay. All right. Well, good to see everybody today. And we will see you again on Friday if you can join.
Thank you, Cameron.
All right.
Thanks, Cameron.
Yep.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you.